It is about 6 o'clock. And I'm calling the select board meeting to order. It is Monday, December 12th, 2022, 6 p.m. And if we could have, I'll just say we've got Zoom instructions here. This is being live by Zoom. They're also recording for later broadcasting via YouTube, and it's also on channel 192 or something like that. So thank you very much. And if we can stand and do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion to approve treasury warrant 2312 and payroll 23 PW12.
Second.
Any discussion?
Clock eye.
Galvin I excluding safe place.
Nichols Eye excluding COA wages.
Lemon eye.
And Benoit, aye. Thank you.
Approval of minutes of November 28, 2020, as written.
Second.
Did you say 20? 20?
Yep.
November 28, 2022.
There you go.
That's what I thought.
So many twos that I don't remember.
Fantastic.
Took us a long time to get around those.
Was there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any corrections? All right, roll call.
Clock eye.
Galvin I.
Nichols Eye.
Whitman eye.
And Benoit, aye.
Tom, you're gonna have to do the 23rd because I wasn't here.
This is
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
I
from
December 1st.
December 1st, 2022. As
Second.
written, sorry.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Clock abstain.
Galvin I.
Nichols Eye.
Whitman eye.
And Benoit, aye. Thank you. All right. We have department head, anybody here for public comment?
Yes, Dick Williams, Overlook. Conservation restrictions. As soon as I said that, I'm going to hear pitter-patter, a little feet probably come around the corner. But you're the boss. Over the years, and I mean, it went way back to Kenny Viner was on the board at first. And I would like to see a book or notebook of all the conservation restrictions and a map where they're laid out. Because I have funny feelings that nobody, and I mean nobody, probably knows where all of them are. And this is for a long period of time. And I tried to do this when I was on Concom and it never happened. And I feel that maybe a college student or something like that might be a good person to, you know, to have this type of a thing to go through and
Conservation engineer. Intern.
and to look it up and lay it out on the maps, because one of the things that I had a discussion with David George was, it could be stuff that we could put trails through or something like that. It might be useful in the future. And thank you for the pitter-patter a little feet. Thank you. I just want you to, you know, to think about it, and I would love to see you do something about that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. It will be recorded. Yes, sir?
If I may comment on that for a minute, Peter Crane, Chair of the Conservation Commission. That is one of the elements of the Open Space and Recreation Plan, which is currently in development for its next edition. And we get that data straight from the assessor's office. So the assessor's office has a code that they use that indicates if there's a conservation restriction or an agricultural restriction or any other kind of restriction on it. That's what we use to generate the map that's in that plan.
Okay, if you want to do it that way, that's one of the ways, yes. Or have them go through all the DEP numbers.
They didn't go through DEP numbers because that doesn't equate. The only way to find them is to go through the registry of deeds.
True, at the end, yes. But I feel that.
And that is what they did the last time we put out the recreation plan. They were still in the process of doing it. I believe that is long done now. They were supposed to have tracked down every deed for every property in town.
They meaning the.
The assessor's
Board of
office.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. But I would hope that being that you're the bosses, that you'd stay on top of it for the future.
So you said, excuse me, thank you. Mr. Crane, you said the assessor's office is in the process of, or was supposed to be tracking down all
5
the
years ago, they
deeds?
were in the process of finishing. They were in the process of walking through every deed for every property in town and determining what had what restrictions along with everything else, because that's part of what they do periodically to ensure that their database is up to date. So I can only imagine that that was 5 years ago, that process would have finished at least once.
Okay. Seems an update should be done every time an action is taken, but I don't know. That's just me being, not knowing.
It would be a one-off per transfer of property, I would imagine. But this is a larger project to ensure that the data that they had in the database was correct.
Okay. Sounds very interesting, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir. Hi.
Randy Jordan, 51 Muskapog Road. I was going to ask to be on the agenda, but I thought it was in time of need to come for public comment just to give you an idea of it. Chairman of the Economic Development for the town of Rutland, and I have listened to you a few meetings ago when I was there to try to do a little bit better and have more meetings more often. And we have been challenged with that, with everybody's schedule in this holiday season, but we have got together with some friends of the Economic Development Committee and visited and taken no votes in some of our things. We had a lady come from the Central Mass Regional Planning the other night and visited with us, and David George was there as well, as he's going to make more effort of being there to kind of represent the town administrator's spot where originally Ron had really pushed us to get going. And there's some uncertainty of which direction and which path to go, and there's a lot of good ideas, and we were genuine pushing on some web page improvement development, and we were looking for grants and things like that. And we may have missed some of the grant opportunities this year due to some of our timing and our meeting challenges and et cetera. In turn, this lovely lady from Central Mass Regional Planning suggested that we would consider some possibly hiring an economic development person for the town of Rutland. And the reason that she had come up with that idea was she lives in the town of Clinton herself, and they had some challenges similar to us and recently have started, from the best of my knowledge. And in turn, they hired a consultant, not a full-time employee with benefits, and it was a part-time salary consultant position. And they took Harper money, is that correct? Harper money.
Harper money.
ARPA? ARPA?
Yes.
ARPA.
And funded it for this year with intentions of possibly trying to get their grant themselves for Clinton in the future coming forward. Our original idea through David George was to do maybe a regional person between a couple of different communities, and we could get some easier funding through some of the grant process. And there was some interest with possibly Barry, a similar community, to do something together. In turn, I think the people that were sitting around the table as friends visiting thought that may be a good kickstart to possibly get going for you folks to consider possibly spending that money to get a person started now, to see and if we can prove that it's a beneficial position to physically do, and then through that person help get grants for other things to help possibly fund that position going forward. And We think that that particular person can bring forth some grant writing opportunities for other benefits to help some of the challenges that we have, or not enough staff to do some of the things that we need through that position. And we felt maybe that person could work with or under David George in some direction and give Dave some assistance, where some of us think that Dave George's plate is full because he's willing to do the work and we have nobody else to ask him to do some of the work in doing that. And we also talked about we could possibly get an intern from Clark University to do something like that, but she felt that they hired a full-time person, and I believe, don't hold to me to this, but I believe they offered that position in Clinton at $55,000 for a part-time employee, but that includes no benefits. And she said they wanted to make that number a little bit bigger to try to draw in a person that wanted to be there more than needed to be there to be more beneficial to the town. I have spoken to a few people about the situation in Clinton. They thought it was very beneficial of the move that they have done, and it seemed to have had an uptick in businesses and other things in the town of Clinton. She was going to forward in the near future an RFP of that position, and then we, the Economic Development Commission, if we had a blessing from you folks, may try to refine that or give the direction of the committee that we were thinking about it, and we would like you to consider that. And the reason I'm here is just to give you some time to think about it, and I'd like to move on it sooner than later if it's a blessing from you folks. But if you say we just don't choose to do the money that way, then I don't know what I'll do, but maybe cry. Is one question. The second question that I had for you would be, we've talked about improving the website to make it a little bit more user-friendly. One of the ladies that's on the committee moved to town and wanted to have an office building or office space here in the town of Rutland. And she had a tough time finding it and didn't know where to do it. We've looked at other communities in regards to some of their web pages, and they're very interactive and offer different businesses that are in town and spaces to rent for her and other things like that. So we think we have a lot to do there, but we don't really know the full scope of it. We, the Economic Development, would like to potentially improve the website, and the lady from Central Mass Regional Planning suggested that we start with the Economic Development site on the town website, just to expand on that a little bit, and don't worry about the big picture at the moment, but try to make that more user-friendly. And there's a younger person that I should have wrote you a letter and brought it to you tonight with the friends to discuss it. Sabrina Heinalomer chooses to join us, which she's involved in the town of Holden Economic Development. And she's willing to do, she used the word Instagram, but Mr. Williams didn't know what Instagram was, or Facebook. But in turn, she said she had the ability to blow things up relatively quickly with some of the positive things that are happening in the town and make it more aware of it. And we felt that we needed to come to the town, if it was okay, would we have your blessing to possibly get, she needed a Gmail account to have an Instagram page, and we wanted to do it on, we wanted to call it Discover Rutland. Instead of come learn about Rutland, we wanted, other communities are doing Discover Rutland. And I believe she had to have a Gmail account, and don't hold me to that because I'm not much better off than Mr. Williams in regards to this Facebook and Instagram kind of stuff. But she said we needed to open an account, but it should be through our town committee kind of place to blow it up on the Instagram kind of thing. And I felt that we probably needed permission from you to say, is it okay to do that? Because she talked about a domain. David George said we needed a domain name and there was a cost to go with that. But then we talked about having a Gmail account, that there's no cost to go with that and do that. But again, above my level, that would be, okay, Randy, go ahead and do that through the Economic Development and use your free page, or yes, we would consider paying for the domain. Peter, can you help me with this, some of this? You know.
Instagram does not need a domain, it just needs a Gmail account and somebody to do it. The domain is, if I think that if she was talking about getting an email account through the town I think that might be what David George was, and there is a cost for every email account
Through the town.
for the town.
So I guess there was the discussion whether we wanted an email account through the town, through our Economic Development Committee, or just do the Gmail account.
If I may, I'm reading between the lines here, but Sabrina may have been talking about a discoverrutland.com, which would be a separate domain, and that would have a cost, or any other domain other than townofrutland.org would have a cost associated with it. But again, that's a guess.
That's
In-
probably similar, but I think it was more about the Instagram, and she needed to link it to something. She just wouldn't use Sabrina Page to do it. She wanted something from the town of Rutland or our committee or something. So a Gmail, I believe, is free. The domain is got an expense.
I think it needs a Gmail account, so,
Okay?
okay. I've got everything you said, and we'll talk about it. Because, right now, the town clerk has ownership of the, website, so she needs to be brought in on the discussion.
So we have talked to her in regards to trying to
Okay.
improve the website, just to give you a little bit more scope to what we've talked about with amongst of them. So the website server that we use is the same that the town of Westminster uses. And the town of Westminster's website is a little bit better than our website and more user-friendly, but it's the same service. So Elizabeth, a member of our committee, has spoken to Westminster, and she's gonna go sit with the assistant town administrator who does all the work up there. In turn, it costs them an extra couple $1,000s annually to make it, give it a facelift, she used. And they do that, it's a guarantee every 5 years for that service to physically do that. The challenge that I think we have is, Anita may not have enough time, and we think possibly the economic development consultant could help with some of that in regards to taking some of the load off Anita and be able to do some of that stuff. And I just think it's, could be overwhelming for a woman of her seniority versus possibly a younger person to help with some of the newer stuff.
Okay, thank you. The website is a larger conversation that we're having in other pockets too, so we'll add that to the conversation and see if we can't expedite it a little bit more. Yeah.
I think to Randy's point, a lot of the cities and towns in Massachusetts use the same
Civic.
Yeah, Civic Plus or whatever. And I think one of the really powerful websites, I pulled it up, is Westboro has a really interactive economic development committee website subpage off of their main page. Obviously, Westboro is a much different beast than Rutland with the Route 9 corridor and everything. But there is the functionality within Civic Plus to do a lot more comprehensive and give some of the boards and commissions a little bit more autonomy, I think, than, just kind of the cookie cutter form. And not to say that every board and commission should have that free reign, but for something that's trying to attract businesses to town, it might be more powerful.
Yeah. It's just, I'm sure that we've got this level, and like you said, to give it a facelift and do different fancy things is gonna come with a cost, so we'll talk about that too.
I think there's some grant opportunities to help improve the website as well, which we were looking at, but that was on October, November deadline that we were challenged with this year at the rate of our speed. We talked about filling that application out now. Again, if we had somebody to help us that process, it may make it easier for us on that.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anybody online that wants to, on Zoom? Going once, going twice. All right. The department head updates. We have first is listed as Rebecca Tuttle. Hi, Becky.
I'm the treasurer collector, in case anybody doesn't know.
Anybody wants to?
Things are busy. We have a lot of turnover going on, so that's my department. We do all the payroll and HR. Once people kind of come on, I make sure that they're on the bills, and as they're coming off, I have to make sure they're off the bills and submit them all. We've had a lot of turnover in dispatch, fire, and quite a few of the full-time people, so that's maintaining their benefits takes up a lot of time. So, other things going on, we just had the state today certified the actual tax rate for FY '23. I know the assessors came in and you discussed the one rate versus two, but everything then has to go over to the state, and they have to check everything and certify the recap. And so they did that today with a little going back and forth with the format that our water sewer information is in, that we had to kind of submit more information for them in their format. You know, we look at it and understand it, but they needed it in a particular spreadsheet. So we had to kind of work our numbers into their format, and working with Jean and Joe, and actually we called in Dan to the rescue, and got everything up there, and it was certified today at 1 o'clock. So this afternoon I was running all the bills, and we'll send them over to the printer. The deadline to send them to the printer is the 14th, so we just under the wire. So it takes the printer a couple days to actually, they get the file and then they generate the bills and mail them all out. So third quarter's billed February, is due February 1st, and the fourth quarter's due May 1st. So, and they're all both in one mailing, which I'm sure people are used to, most of them. The other information I got this week was the assessment from Worcester Regional Retirement for FY24. There's a meeting January 14th, actually January 19th, to kind of go over what made up the changes in this year's assessment. We're looking at a 23% increase in our assessment, which is about $180,000. Most of that, they did a revaluation this year, so they take a snapshot as of December 31st. It's December 31st, 2021, and they calculate based on the age of our employees, the wages of our employees, who's of our retirees, and they kind of do an actuarial study from that point in time as to where our benefits will be, and that's what kind of drives the assessment. They do it once every 2 years, so this was the first relook at the our population of current employees and retirees since December of 2000, if I'm doing the math right, 2019. So we have more employees and kind of like a younger pool, and I think salaries have gone up quite a bit, so we're looking at a large increase there. Working with Gary on pulling together the numbers for the FY24 budget, that's part of it. And Jean is going to be working on putting together the spreadsheet that we use to calculate everything, pull it all together and figure out where we are. But it's going to be a tough FY24 budget. So, and that's what's going on in my neck of the woods.
Brought us
Have any
such great
questions?
news.
I know, sorry.
Thank you for everything.
So through the
The
chair.
the printer sends out the bills?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we send them a file and they generate everything and mail them.
Thank you.
So through the chair. So Becky, you had mentioned a lot of turnover and stuff like that. Are we having exit conferences for employees that are leaving? I know we've discussed that several times about somebody meeting with staff as they leave the town. Is that being done?
Okay, so
We brought it up at the last
And we brought it up several
roundtable.
times.
Yeah, it should be done.
I can't speak to the individual departments, but I can say it has not been done through our office.
Can we talk to Gary about that? I know that we brought that up several
Let's-
times, that we wanted to
Sure that we-
start it.
get that done.
Seth is sitting right there, and so, did I hear you say fire too?
Right. But I think it
So,
would come out of
you
the town administrator's office.
Yeah,
The
but does-
department wouldn't do their own
Yeah,
necessarily.
well, you don't know,
They might do their own, but I
Usually,
think
yeah,
it's over
usually,
and
I
above.
would have thought the department would do their own, but if that's something that you think should come from outside of the department as to why an exit interview, this is the first I've heard of it, I don't know.
So do you do an exit interview when they leave?
We do an internal exit interview,
when we meet with our individuals, and, you know, over the last 6 to 8 months, we've lost 50% of our full-time staff have left to go on to other things, and it all came down to money and going to a bigger department for further advancement. And I've had 2 leave the fire service completely after COVID. They were done, and they were all done with the fire service and ambulance business, and they wanted out, so
They were burnt up.
burnt out.
Through the chair, no offense to you, chief, but I think it's a lot better if you have an outside
I agree.
party
Right.
I agree.
interview, because they're gonna be a lot less,
Yep.
it's a lot less
Stress.
likely of them being truthful
Right.
to your
I agree.
face than it is to
And
somebody.
I don't have any problem with the department doing
Right.
their own, but I think the administration, the town administration
Right.
should be looking at if there's been turnovers in departments,
Right.
to do it independently, so.
Thank you for that reminder.
Wouldn't you think that somebody should say, oh geez, we've lost 50% of our people, maybe we have a problem that should be looked at before we've already lost half of them?
Well, that's why we brought up that there should be
Yeah.
exit conferences, so
But
we find
what
out
I'm
what.
saying is you got 2 departments in the same building, you know, is it the way the,
3 departments in the same building.
Right, the
Yes,
police,
yes.
we've had.
well, I guess
Police
police is just as bad, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So in turn, maybe it's the building, maybe it's not
Yeah.
the money or something, but
It's definitely, it's worth talking about, to try and figure out what's going on. I mean, money's definitely a huge issue, but I don't think it's fair to say it's the only issue.
Right.
It's never the only issue.
Well, that's why it should come from the administration.
Mhm.
Anyway.
That's it.
Anything else?
Anything else for Becky?
I have a quick question. You mentioned about the state still having confusion about our water sewer funds and everything, and I know that that's been an ongoing thing since a few years ago when we had to do the recombine and everything. Is that still kind of the hangover from that? And is there any way that at some point going forward, we can work with the state so that they understand what, you know, that, because it feels like sometimes from the state perspective, on one hand, the state says you're doing everything, we're happy with it, and then the other hand of the state is saying, no, you're not doing it right, we need all of different documentation, or the same documentation just submitted differently or something. And I feel like it's been a couple iterations through now between setting the tax rate and certifying free cash and everything. So at some point, I'm hoping that we can get to a point, either internally we adjust or with the state we adjust, like.
I think this year, again, we had Jean instead of Dan, so there was a learning curve there, so
Mhm.
that slowed things down a bit, so I'm hoping that next year it'll go smoother. But the difference, I guess, is there's so many different ways that every town does water and sewer different. Like we have the rates for usage for water and sewer, but then we have fees. The fees for sewer construction, sewer inflow and infiltration, and the water construction. A lot of other places don't have the fees. So the form that they use just says, here's the usage, what did you bill in '22, what did you bill in '23, is it gonna meet your budget? But we have to calculate, like, we have to add the fees in there to come to the total, because they're looking at a total budget. So it's different every different town in Massachusetts, they do it differently. So the state tries to give you, like, here's the form that I'm used to seeing, you need to put it in this, so.
To make it work for us.
Exactly, so they can understand it, because and we sent them what we look at, and they're like, I don't know what it is. And that, actually, this is the first time that I got involved in what we were sending the state, so I kinda helped Jean and Joe and everybody kind of translate it and put it into their format. So I'm hoping that the format that we created this year, I can just plop over and use it next year. And it's gonna match, because they need to prove, in order to certify our tax rate, part of it is that to guarantee that, okay, here's our water and sewer budget, it's going up. You need to show me that your rates are gonna cover the whole thing before they'll certify the whole thing. So that's, you need to show that your FY23, the rates that you're charging are gonna match or be higher than your budget that you've submitted. So, I'm hopeful that as long as the state doesn't change the spreadsheet, that we can recreate it for next year
Oh.
and know what we're looking at, so.
All right. I wasn't sure whether, it just seems like every year there's some, and I wasn't sure if it was from the recombining of the water and
Yeah.
sewer, or if this was just,
No, I think it's just because every town is different, you know what I mean, and I think we had turnover.
Right.
And it's just
and I guess if the
the
department
nature of
head,
it.
yeah, if the department head isn't sure what, you know, if previously the accountant was taking care of it all pretty much, and the department heads other department heads aren't sure how it should look on the state side,
Yeah.
then
Mhm.
it's, yeah, so.
Yeah. So,
Okay, well, thank you for the
Yeah.
explanation and for helping with it.
no problem.
Anybody else? Thank you, Becky.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Mattson from Cable.
Okay. To go along with the staffing, our committee is short one person right now, okay? And actually, to get the operations part of it back to a comfortable level, we could use at least 2 people, all right? And I find out today that one of the colleges that I talked to, the person whom I've been talking to moved on at the end of first semester last year. And my emails and whatnot had gone unanswered. And I wondered why, and today I found out. So at any rate, okay, the problem reaching out is there was a problem that comes up every once in a while. Okay, so at any rate, that's where we stand staff-wise. And so, okay. We have received an annual payment from Spectrum of $77,101.17. Last year's amount was $800,088.05, and a difference of $2,986.88. So under present contract, we've been receiving 3% of Spectrum's annual sales in the town. And in simple terms, the number of subscribers has decreased over the past 3 years due to availability of other internet options such as Netflix and so on and so forth. At any rate, we've got to a point now of where we will be looking at renegotiating a contract beginning probably in July or thereabouts of the upcoming year. And I want to thank Gary for making headway with Charter or Spectrum, however you want to call it. That made them come to us and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and so on and so forth. So we are preparing now for the 6 months down the road, and we'll begin to get involved in contract negotiations and see where we go. 3% was a pretty good sized number for a town this size the last time we made a contract, okay? And so at this point in time, I'm hoping that I can hold on to the 3%, but I've heard from other towns they're bigger towns, let's put it that way, and I've heard from those towns that, you know, the amounts that they're getting, you know, very back and forth, and so, you know, they're all telling me 3% is really good for you guys, so hold on to it as, you know, as much as you can. So at any rate, one of the committee's concerns will be to hold on to whatever we can, and also to find out what Charter's intent is to do with their decreasing subscriber numbers that here in town. This is not the only town that's having that difficulty either. And you'll see advertisements on TV for various video services as well as internet services and so on and so forth. So, you know, these people are out there to give the cable companies a run for their money, and people are making the change because, you know, good salesmanship is good salesmanship. So, at this particular point in time, that's where that stands. Now, as far as projects are concerned, we are currently looking into a new audio system for this area, for the Calkins room as well as the Blair room. And Peter's been working on that primarily, and so I'll let you describe where we are with it and where you're going with it.
Thank you, Paul. So there was a demonstration by a company that was interested in providing the service or selling us the equipment. That was a couple weeks ago now. Chair could make it, thank you very much. We got to experience their equipment both in the room and on the far end. We actually set up a Zoom call to the Blair room, and we just walked back and forth and listened to each end. We were very impressed. It's a system that we are very interested, but we're investigating lots of options before we make a decision. As Paul said, we will be planning to do all 3 rooms at the lower level of the library. There's an additional thing we're talking about for Calkins. We haven't really gotten it completely down yet, but one of the problems that RCTV has is that when somebody wants to hold a Zoom meeting in the Calkins room, they require RCTV help because there's no equipment in there. My hope is to get the equipment to make that a standalone Zoom room so that someone can just walk in, log in, and use Zoom without anybody else's help. We would also have the ability to put it on TV in the same way that we do this room with the Blair room, but we haven't fleshed that idea out more than as just being an idea. We still haven't, because we don't have a complete system set up, we can't go to the Library Board of Trustees for approval, but I expect that will be forthcoming once we have the system laid out. I spent a couple weeks ago writing about 34, 35 pages of document with each of our use cases, how we would use this room in isolation versus Blair versus Calkins, and how we could combine them for meetings when we want to do that, or when different meetings are going on at the same time, how do we set everything up? That posted a bunch of questions that the vendor got back to me today on, so we're going through questions and answers right now to, again, try and determine the kind of system that will in fact meet RCTV's needs for these rooms. Oh, I will say this is likely to be a multi-year project. We allocated a certain set of funds for this room only this fiscal year. And that will not cover all 3 rooms, there's no way for it to. So this will be some elements this year, this fiscal year, and some in the future. I believe that's all on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, some of the things that we're looking at for contract negotiation is talking about broadband expansion. Where does Rutland fit into charters? I'm going to continue to use charter because I've had charter in my brain for the last 20 years. But at any rate, where do we fit in charter's schedule for broadband expansion in here? Something similar to what's been done in Princeton and other towns in the area. And also, I've had about 60% of the seniors say to me that their internet costs are a concern for them, okay? Can we do something to get Charter to back up on their internet charges for seniors or something along those lines? And something else that we have been talking about is charges for broadband, for 65 and over, and how are they relating to the 40 to 65 age bracket. Also, we're looking to see where high definition for the town of Rutland is on charter schedule. All right, and that's something that we should be seriously considering because it's something that's happening in other towns around us and is not, as far as I can find out, come to the top as far as giving us a place in line is concerned. Something else that we're looking into that I've been asked about many times is a la carte programming. So in other words, if you want to have the Boston TV stations and perhaps Nesson and CNN or one of those type of situations, that you can do that for a discounted price instead of having to pay for the full basic services that Charter offers to you, okay? And also, we have had complaints about poor Wi-Fi reception in the town. I think that's probably something that needs to be addressed, and as well, the volume level between channel 191 and channel 192, our local cable television channels, they vary quite distinctly from time to time. So part of what we are looking at here is to attempt to even it out from this end of it and hopefully take care of a better portion of it that we're dealing with Charter's output right now. So pretty much in a nutshell, that's where we stand. I have one other comment to make, and that's after a select board meeting decided on a group that would look into a new town administrator for Rutland. Community Pride, I believe is the name of the organization. And it was decided to hold a session for department managers to discuss the type of person best suited for our interests. It's my guess that cable access people were left out of these sessions for reasons that have only begun to be explained to me. It would seem that people who are present at so many meetings of the town committees and boards and so on and so forth might have an overall perspective of what activities could be included in town administrator duties. Perhaps an external view could be included. Thank you.
Okay. We haven't invited all people from all of the departments and committees and all of that to participate in that finding, to the initial conversations with the company. So cable was not left out of anything because not everybody was included in it. And we're still, as he's just the gentleman that's been assigned to us has just been starting to do the work, and if anybody, I don't know, I'll have to check and find out what the cost of it is, maybe to do it. If you've had a little bit more conversation with him, Tamika, so if we add more one-on-one meetings with the gentleman, do you have a sense if that's going to increase the cost of us having this service?
I can't speak to the price of it. I can say that in having a conversation with him, it seems that they have a pretty standard format in which they do it, and it's typically only meeting with specific department heads, primarily public safety and Department of Public Works. It doesn't seem that they tend to branch out to anybody below that.
Okay.
So I think it would, the board might have to specifically request that if that was something that they felt was important. And at that time, I guess if we had like a specific number of additional folks, we could ask if there's some sort of cost associated with that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I thought we were going to ask Tamika, I'm not sure if we decided to or not, ask if there was a way to create like a email address for the additional people could send input to an email address for Community Paradigm to consider, because obviously having a one-on-one or like a small focus group or whatever, it may not be feasible based on time and cost, but having an email associated with kind of the town of Rutland that only Community Paradigm sees, so it can be as anonymous to town as possible, and they can collate the feedback. It wouldn't necessarily help for the individual, like one-on-one or small group face-to-face, but it might be an option for additional department heads, boards, commissions, as well as the public. I mean, I think there's some vocal members of the public that probably feel like they could
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to John about that and see what we can do to get something set up.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, was my understanding too. He said he was gonna go through us and discuss with certain people, then open it up to the public through an email, so that everyone could give their opinion or their 2 cents or whatever. I think it would probably take forever if you didn't do it. Something
Well,
like that.
I think, if I may, the other company that was interviewed was the one that had that
About
set
the
up.
email,
So
right?
we would have to specifically ask this company if they would be willing to do that. But I'm certainly happy to talk to them about that and see what we can set up.
Please
through the
do
chair.
that. And I think what I'd like to say is, let's take the requests from cable, from anybody else that has a request, that works for the town. We'll take those and see what, if it's one person, it's probably not gonna cost us anything, but if we have 10 people, they may charge us more money. I guess that's what we're trying to keep track of, but if you wanna talk with him, then
No problem.
we'll consider that. We'll ask him if he can do one more, or we just wanna make sure that we don't go out of control money-wise. It's not any other reason other than finances.
So through the chair, yeah, I know it was the first one that mentioned an email, but I thought they mentioned some avenue
I
about
think that
getting
they
public
see-
I thought
comment.
you did too, yeah.
It wasn't an email, but it was some
I
other,
don't remember specifically what it was.
right, but they did
though.
offer something
Yes.
for public comment.
I'll ask him about that. I don't know. There is a document in your packet tonight that they sent with the agreement. I don't know if it lists that in there, but it does give a breakdown of their process. So I'm not sure if it listed or not. It might not though.
We'll look at that. So, just for anybody listening, with what you were talking about, the 3%, that only comes from cable services, that does not come for internet, that's only the cable, correct?
That's right.
So, because I think we had that discussion that I only have internet in my home and nothing comes to the town because of that. But my costs keep going up exponentially. It just went up $5 off cycle. So usually it's the July 1st, and so it just went up $5. Just so that everybody knows and can sympathize with Carol, my internet is $105 a month, just for internet. And nothing goes to cable. So when you are negotiating that 3%, we're losing because people like me don't have cable. I don't want all those channels. I
Most
have a
people
couple
are
of paid
streaming.
service. Yes, they're streaming.
Streaming
So maybe they could move all of it or some of it to just the internet, because Spectrum has us over a barrel. There's nothing. We don't have options for internet in this town. So my question too is, are there any other surrounding towns that have other options besides Spectrum, or are we the only one that has a commodity here?
Well, the first town that comes to mind is Millbury. Now they have Spectrum, and they have AT&T. Okay, so in other words, so their town is split, but it's kind of divided by what end of town you happen to live on. Okay, I also know that Worcester also has a 3 service set up in their area. Okay. But we're looking at bigger towns, all right? The problem is, being a small town, and you can take, and Barry and Hubbardston and Princeton and those, and they're all, pretty much in the same breakdown as far as charter is concerned. And so, pardon me, getting all these things put together and trying to split it out. 10 years ago, I sent out letters, requests to NYNEX or AT&T, and 2 other companies, looking to see if we could foster an interest into coming into Rutland. And of the 3 or 4 companies that I sent a letter to, I didn't hear back from one of them. Okay, so in other words, kind of says to me that, whatever town it is, that is owned by this particular cable company, it's owned by this particular cable company, and basically that's all she wrote. But that was 10 years ago,
Yeah.
too.
Be
So this
interesting
may
if
be-
other towns that
Right.
surround us might go in with us to make that request.
There are potential challenges because usually, and I haven't read ours, but the license agreement generally grants exclusivity.
Right, but we're up.
Yeah, we're up in
Okay.
24, so
24.
we'll see what happens with this round, and if we, but we have to be willing to take the stand, and we may take a financial hit in order to have a non-exclusive contract. I don't know. It's
I
possible.
hear you.
Now, and then I will also say something that I just saw the other day is Verizon is beginning to expand Fios, not for cable, not for television services, but purely for internet. So there may be an opportunity there. We'll have to. This will not be the first time that Fios was started and then stopped and started and stopped. So we'll have to see what that holds in line with our
Exactly.
license renewal.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. In other words, we're starting in, and it's, from what I'm gathering, talking with other people, it's a new ballgame. So, Spectrum has pretty much reworked themselves and changed their approach to things and this sort of thing. So, at this particular point in time, it would have been normal for me to have a contact with Charter's area representative. And so far, been unable to accomplish that. The person that Gary got to talk to was a assistant too, okay? But in other words, he was able to get to talk to somebody. So, all right. So these are the types of issues that not only I, but Holden has also run into. And Holden is entering into their second year now without a contract. Okay, so in other words, there's a lot of issues here when you're trying to get things that will improve TV as well as internet and so on and so forth for the town. And yet, it's just a struggle as far as, to put it simply. So, where we start and where we go at this particular moment in time, I've been given some ideas from other towns, but, it's still a matter of what Charter's gonna open up as, all right?
Okay. All right.
I'll never get Charter. Let's see that.
If I may, to put our funding in perspective, we got $77,000 this week, last 2 weeks. Last week. The budget to keep the lights on, that's to say to keep cable operating, is $98,000 this year. That's just keeping it on. That's not the audio system, the expansion of the control room, or anything else. That's going to get worse before it gets better. We know we have a long-term funding problem.
Yep.
In fact, we're beginning to examine alternatives, setting up a 501c3 separate corporation instead of having a town department is the most frequent way to go, but that has its own problems associated with it. We do certainly have a bucket of funds that we've collected over the years, and we are eating into it. But as I said, if we were to stick to budget, if we were to use every dollar in our budget, we'd strip roughly $30,000 out of that this year. And we have to be careful because we can't just use the money that we have for anything that we want. Some is by law allocated to capital expenditures, and some can be used for operating expenses, and we need to be careful about that.
Any other questions for?
Just to follow up on the TA, on the first page in section 2 under preparation, it talks about in-person, virtual, and it also talks about surveys to gather resident and community input and engagement. So they had talked about a survey. So they had offered that in there.
All right.
If I may have one last thing, because it was brought up last time we were in the room, closed captioning. We spent a surprising amount of money on attorneys the last couple of months trying to figure out what the town's obligations are for closed captioning. The answer is that very likely we can get past the FCC requirements, but it's very unlikely that we can get past the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. That's $6,000 a year for that, roughly. And more money that we have to find in our operating budget. I just
But is
wanna-
anybody asking for an accessibility?
Not yet, but it will come as a lawsuit from the federal government. That's what is most likely what we will see first.
All right.
And the only real exception to the ADA is financial hardship. And $6,000 out of our 90-something thousand operating budget may or may not be considered financial hardship. The problem is that because we are a town department, the town council suggests that it is likely that the entire town budget would be considered the bucket of money, not just our particular budget. So financial hardship of $6,000 a year over the town's budget is not going to be considered a particular hardship, more than likely.
Y'all are just spreading good cheer tonight.
Happiness and joy all around.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Old business.
You're gonna do town administrator update, you can.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Now that I put my glasses on. I've written notes all over that, so I can't see it now.
So I'm filling in for Gary tonight, just to provide the board with some updates. A couple of them are listed on the agenda. Last week, he and I met with 3 representatives from the Blue Sox, and we had a really great meeting. They're very excited to be involved with the town. For the upcoming baseball season, they're going to schedule us, along with 23 other communities, take a town takeover night. So that night will be specific to Rutland, and the theme will be all about Rutland. So there would feature a certain percentage of the ticket sales would go to a local nonprofit. So it would be nice if you guys have any ideas of any nonprofits that you're aware of, that might want to be considered for that. We also have the opportunity of having 3 or 4 local veterans honored that evening, recognized, and they're also eligible to get up to 4 complimentary tickets for that specific game as well. So in your packets, I've provided the upcoming season, and they have asked the board to please choose a handful of dates that we can give back to them, that they can say what the availability is. There are some Friday and Saturday night dates, so I don't know if that might be the preference. But they would just like us to come back at them with a few dates so that we can firm up what that date will be come the spring. But it could also be the summer as well. It's whatever the board chooses to do. In addition to the Rutland Takeover Night, they would like to have a presence at some of our bigger town events, bringing in their mascots, Smiley and Woofster, I think his name is. So I have formed a connection with George, and I'm just going to reach out to him each time we have a big event coming up, and they'll see if they have somebody available to come out. They're actually hoping to maybe have a presence at our upcoming Smithsonian exhibit as well. So they're just looking to kind of forge and expand on this relationship. They're talking about possibly being available and connecting with Rutland Little League, maybe for their opening day. So I've given them the contact information for all of the folks in town that they would need to connect with, such as Karen Greenwood, Rutland Little League, and a couple of other folks as well. So I don't know if the board wants to look at that and make a decision tonight. George has asked us to get the dates to him ASAP because they're filling up quickly with the other communities. Or if you guys prefer to email them to me, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 dates, and then he'll let us know what's available, and they'll pick one date, and that night will be specific to Rutland. They said they can hang the town's flag, the Rutland flag, that night. They also there's also talks about the police chief's daughter singing the national anthem that night. And of course, promoting ticket sales in town so that families, will go and participate.
I wonder if we should try to get the pulse of the
Well,
sports teams.
so that's what I was thinking, because I'm thinking probably the earlier the better.
Are you looking at March? We're going to be sitting there with my coat and hat on.
Listen, once these leagues go and kick into full gear, it's nonstop between practices and games. So I'm trying to think of everyone in town
Yep.
to participate. And once these leagues, start, it's tough.
Yep.
So it might be a little chilly, but
So they're probably available.
that's my only thought there as far as conflicting schedules. But
I thought that Little League used to do like night at
yeah, Bravehearts.
the Bravehearts or something also, so they might and that I thought was like in June or something, because I remember it being crazy with like the older schools like end of year activities and everything. So I don't know if this, to your point, that the leagues might be able to offer some input.
I mean, ask Jonathan Miller. Jonathan Miller will tell. He'll tell you as far as Little League, and I don't think soccer plays that time of year, right?
No, they do. There's
Do they?
soccer.
Okay, then soccer too. Yeah, I mean
Mountain
they're the
Club.
people that would know,
Mhm.
because most of the people going to this are going to be baseball fans, right?
Mhm.
So Jonathan Miller would be able to tell you.
And we have town meeting in May, and that's Mother's Day weekend and everything. And then June gets crazy with like middle school graduation, high school graduation, all of that. The first half of June at least. So, and then I know we get into like vacation and 4th of July craziness here in town. So
There's also late season as well. I think the season runs through September, if
yeah.
I'm not mistaken. So, maybe if you want to go for dates either toward the beginning or the end, and see what may be available.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the September game might be kind of fun, just like
Yeah.
back to school but I have no idea. I have no concept.
It's just all scheduling, because then you're talking football, soccer, lacrosse, and everything else. It's just ask them. I think they know best. I mean,
Through the chair, though, if they want to go bad enough, they will adjust
yeah.
themselves to go.
Yeah. I mean,
Let's be real.
if we schedule it now, they could possibly
Adjust. Yeah.
adjust.
Right.
Hello.
So, just to let you know, the Department of Food and Ag went last year to the Woo Sox game, and they had the upper balcony. I don't remember what it was called. You were there with us. But they have an upper balcony on
Gee,
the...
Seth doesn't remember?
There was an upper balcony that all the Department of Food and Ag people went. The ticket was a little bit more money, but they also gave you a buffet to do it. I don't know whether they offered that to all the Rutland residents to do. That's something to consider.
Yeah, I don't believe that's the way that they do it, just because it's open to the whole town. So they did not discuss having there be like a specific section with food
I'm just,
in particular.
that may be something to consider to, give a little more incentive for people to go and all be able to sit together in more pub style. It was very nice for the Department of Food and Ag of young and old that went. So it's a larger area that could do. I believe Friday nights also has fireworks that you want to consider, that some people enjoy fireworks that go there as well. If I had a question through the chairman to the town administrator is, did they say anything about, still wanting to come to Rutland for a practice field, or was it all about the game down there?
It was specifically about the Rutland Takeover Day.
Okay.
It was briefly brought up, but they said they were the wrong folks
Okay.
to talk to about
Just
that.
the economic
Just the
development has
marketing.
talked about that in the past.
Yeah,
and just didn't want that to be
these
a
gentlemen were
difference.
strictly marketing folks, and they said that was not in their purview, but it did briefly come up during the conversation.
So why don't you speak with baseball, if you don't mind?
Okay.
Because they also might have a team that they want to be the opponent that night, so that might play into it as well. And then we'll just try to get that, if they can get them back to us with a date, we'll get that out to all the teams that play everything and see if they can't accommodate their schedules at this point. Maybe too late, but perhaps.
Okay. And the next update was Gary and I also met on December 1st with Senator Goby and Representative Kim Ferguson. And the big focus of that was we wanted to talk to them about security upgrades at the schools. And unfortunately, it's looking like there isn't going to be money at the state level to help us with that. Anne would really like to see this be a district initiative in an effort to try to lower the overall cost. In the past, it has not been something of, I don't want to say interest in the district, but they haven't really latched onto that idea. And I think that some of our concern is we don't want to see that security foregone at the Rutland schools if the district doesn't want to hop on board. So Anne and Kim offered to attend the next meeting that the superintendent holds with the 5 community town administrators and town managers. They were not particularly receptive to that, so instead they indicated that they were going to reach out directly to Gary, and so we've been waiting to hear from the superintendent as to when he wants to meet with Gary to discuss that. But it is something that we're still trying to keep the ball rolling on because, we do have Mike Moriarty and Principal Conacchioli at CTMS have done a great deal of work trying to get quotes and figuring out what we need to do. And something that Mike kind of advised on is that, even if the district does decide to do it, the monitoring cannot be regionalized. It's going to have to be independent of each public safety department as far as monitoring those camera systems. So that's kind of where we've landed. And we're kind of waiting for the district to put the ball back in our court in that respect.
I mean, I'm the municipal rep to the school committee, so I can reach out, and my impression was the new administration was much more willing to have conversations with the town, but I don't know specifically for this what the rationale may or may not be, or
Yeah, it says,
whatever.
did I get that right? That the district, whoever that is, does not want to meet with Anne and Kim.
Correct. So
On
we
this.
had proposed, Anne and Kim had offered to attend the next meeting, which is at the end of December. And so of course, as a courtesy, we reached out to say, are you amenable to that? We didn't want to just invite them and have them show up. And the response that we got was that they only wanted to speak to Gary, but we have not been able to make contact. Unfortunately, communication has not been as easy as we had hoped it would be with that transition. Especially as well about budget things and capital things and stuff like that. So at this point, we're waiting for them to contact Gary to just have a conversation about how we move forward with this so that it doesn't go stagnant.
It's good feedback.
It's a
It's
big
interesting
concern.
because attending the school committee meetings and watching the school committee meetings, it definitely seems that they're holistically much more willing and wanting to be forthcoming with the towns. So, and I know that there had been in, conversation as far as getting, a district-wide push to the state level for different things, not specifically for this, but just in general. So
Seems like they don't want to shut that door then.
right, right, so,
Right, absolutely. I think there's been kind of a renewed concern from the parents' perspective because the district has been doing the ALICE training related to school shootings, and so it's kind of just highlighted the lack of security that we have at our local schools, and it's a really important issue that we don't want to see fall to the wayside. Even if the funding isn't there, on a town level, to be able to get it on a district level, and like Anne pointed out, perhaps that would lower the cost. Just to even get the ball rolling in this conversation going, because it first started 2 years ago and then, kind of fell apart. And I think it's been kind of renewed with the recent training in the district.
and I do think that they had talked about it at one of the fairly recent meetings also about which schools had which schools had kind of acceptable security versus which ones needed security to look at. And I don't even know if it was included in their capital plan. I don't know if you guys got the updated capital plan where they had the central tree roof on and everything that I had asked.
I think Gary has a copy of that.
Okay, I'm not sure if there was anything on any of those, not just for Rutland schools, but for all the schools in the district, security or whatever. So, I mean, I can just kind of touch base as like a municipal rep
Yeah,
and be like,
That would be great.
you know, if
That would
that's,
be great, yeah. I think it's important to figure out why, because right now I think ours, like, why wouldn't you want to at least, like you said, if this relationship, just let them come and talk.
right,
You
And-
opened a door and now
right.
you're
right.
shutting it.
And I know that there are, and I don't know all of the school committee bylaws as far as what the school committee needs to be involved in, the whole school committee needs to be involved in versus what the administration can be involved in and all of that. So I don't, but it doesn't
Maybe
hurt
that's
to just
something.
touch base and,
Yeah, if you don't mind doing that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
To help facilitate it.
Item that sounds.
I don't know.
Okay. I just didn't know.
All right.
The next thing on the update was that today the Smithsonian exhibit was delivered to the library. DPW helped unload it, and staff is working hard on assembling it. And that is set to open on December 18th, and it's going to run through January 28th. The library and the 300th have been advertising it. We do have a notice up on the electronic sign, social media, the town's website. So hopefully it will be well attended by the public. And there's going to be an event for staff and those participating next week. There's an introductory event for folks, a reception, thank you, for folks to attend. And then also in your packets, I included a letter that Gary received today complimenting Lynn Miller from the Board of Health. She really went above and beyond to help somebody who is struggling with her public services. And so Gary just wanted to make sure that the board was aware, of the great service that she provided to this resident and to commend her for that.
and if I may, I see that they're saying, the resident is saying if there's an Employee of the Year award or month, Employee of the Year or month award in Rutland, they would like to nominate Lynn for that award. But I know we haven't yet officially opened the Moses Howell Award, but also that could potentially be an opportunity as far as like the community involvement.
We need to do the Moses Howe. We need to get that going.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I was thinking about it a couple of weeks ago. And
I know, I thought about it and I,
I just wrote it on my list. And second to last, just to give you guys a heads up, we have received a notice of intent to sell for a Chapter 61A property in town. So that is going to be coming before you guys for your initial review at your January meeting. It was a complete application, it has been received in the proper manner. So I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up that that's coming down the road.
It's all received in, why is it waiting until January?
It was received late Thursday afternoon, so we were not able to get it on this agenda because we first had to confirm that everybody received it in the way that they were supposed to via certified mail. I received that confirmation today, so that's why it will not be on until the board's next full meeting in January.
And we have time for that?
We have 120 days.
The 30 days doesn't
Nope, that
All
only
that.
is, nope, that's only if it's a notice of intent to convert.
convert.
So we don't need to worry about that. And the last item has to do with an ambulance update, and that's why Chief Knight
That's
is
why
here.
I just realized, that's why.
I'm here. Again, Seth Knight, Fire Chief, thank you for having me this evening. Gary was gonna give you the update, but unfortunately Gary's not here, so Tamika approached me and I figured I'd just come give you what's the status of what's going on. Give you some background, back in 2020, we took over ambulance service for the town of Ocam through a municipal agreement. They pay us a service fee annually. It's a 5-year contract. We're just finishing year 3 now. So that took place July 1st, 2020. November 2020, I applied for a federal grant, leveraging that relationship and that municipal partnership with through FEMA to purchase a new ambulance and to leverage that regionalization effort that we partaked on. In August of 2021, we were awarded a $300,000 federal grant to purchase an ambulance. At that point, the prior ambulance that we did purchase here in Rutland was in 2018. We went back to that same vendor and we wanted to duplicate that exact truck. One was when the grant was initially done, we were using pricing from 2020. And then the grant was awarded a year later. So basically, we were trying to eliminate some costs, and by duplicating it, we wouldn't have to pay for the engineering and everything. But we had to wait until November fall town meeting because we needed to match 5%. Capital planning and the town supported that. In November of '21, the town appropriated $14,000, which was the 5% match for that purchase. A contract was signed, order was placed, and unfortunately, because town meeting was so late in November, we missed the 2021 Dodge Ram order entry for new chassis. So forward ahead to August of this current year, our order had gotten placed with Dodge. And in in August of this year, of '22, we were notified that all of the 2022 chassis orders were canceled by Chrysler. Because of market conditions, they could not get materials and stuff to build the chassis that they originally had on order. At that point, I was very nervous because we have a 2-year window to finalize this grant, to take delivery and pay for it. So basically, we burned through a whole year up through this August, and we still haven't had any metal cut to build a new ambulance. I immediately called FEMA, advised them of what was going on. They totally understood because this was not just our problem. This was, every fire department that was awarded a fire truck or an ambulance was seeing the same condition. They gave us a 3-month extension to November of '23 to complete the project. We were hoping that we were told then that Dodge would be accepting orders for new chassis in November of '22. And last week we got a phone call that Dodge will no longer be building Dodge chassis for fleet service vehicles going forward. So what does that mean? The truck that we had originally designed and spec'd was built on a Dodge chassis. We could not get a Dodge chassis. So now, what do? Do we go back to a Ford? Well, yes, we can go back to a Ford, but the problem is, if we go back to a Ford and order it today, we will not take delivery of that chassis until third quarter of '23, which will be when the grant is complete. It needs to be completed. So we have a potential of losing out on $300,000 if we don't make some decisions quickly. I've reached out to all the ambulance manufacturers that are on the state bid list for procurement purposes to try to streamline the process, to see what is out there and what is available. There are 2 ambulance manufacturers that have units that are either available now or are in production, chassis already in, metal's being cut and is being built, that are similar to our spec, that would be available within the next 6 months if we were to do that. The problem is that we are now technically 3 cycles into a newer truck. And so obviously with the global, supply chain issues, you've seen cost of goods just skyrocket. We potentially are going to be short $75,000 to $80,000 on this truck. So we have to make a decision. What do? We can't wait to an annual town meeting in May to appropriate additional money from capital stabilization or any other revenue source, because we would be not securing a vehicle until then, and we would probably miss the window and lose the $300,000 grant. So I'm just looking for direction from the board and through the TA. Can we aggressively pursue some other alternatives and other vendors, and potentially coming back to this board for potential use of ARPA funds to bridge that gap because of the time constraint? That's my only concern, is that I don't want to lose out on the $300,000 because we have 3 ambulances now that all have well over 150,000 miles each on each of the 3 ambulances, that we are in desperate need of to replace one of them, and we will be on I'll be back at the annual town meeting. If this doesn't happen and we lose the 300,000, I'll be back at the annual town meeting to ask for public funds to fund a brand-new ambulance that won't be delivered for 2 years. So again, this is way beyond our control. We can exercise the force majeure clause in the contract that we currently have because they can't achieve the delivery date as specified because they can't get the chassis available. So again, we've spent no public funds at this point on our own. So we haven't lost out on anything other than the availability of, now we're being forced into a newer model year, a newer design that is just gonna unfortunately cost the town more money. So,
FEMA's not looking to increase that
no,
grant.
I've already asked, so.
When does this board need to make that decision?
I would need this board to say, obviously it's not on the agenda to vote on an action, but the consensus of the board is to have Gary and I come back to you at your 27th on the 27th.
We're not gonna meet,
It's a Zoom,
we're
right?
meeting only to Zoom to do payroll.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking you what your deadline is, so that I can.
I would like to do it before then, or by then, if I zoomed in with you and you just voted to, move forward with that, we'd give you all the information ahead of time. That's totally up to your purview, how you want to handle that.
I don't see any reason why you and Gary shouldn't hash out the details so that we are informed to be able to make a decision. I don't know that you need the board's approval to do that.
Okay.
I mean, you could do that, we wouldn't know until you came back. So I think the board just needs to make a decision
Sure.
based on what you've.
Okay, then I would just need to be on your next available agenda to make a decision
Yeah.
on how we're gonna
Alright.
handle this issue.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it.
I know you said FEMA is not, if I may, that FEMA's not willing to do anything, and I know that you've been in touch with McGovern, Representative McGovern's office and everything, because it's a national issue, it's not
Right.
just a Rutland issue, and I know federal government's well aware, but there's not anything that,
No, because there's $230 million set aside for this grant program, and all that money was awarded out to all these cities and towns. And so the funding had to be spent the funding needed to be allocated by September 30th, at the end of the fiscal year of 21, which it was. So there's no additional available money in that bucket of funds. And they're basically looking back at us as, well, we gave you all this ARPA funds, you should be, utilizing that. I know several cities and towns in the general area have used ARPA funds to purchase an ambulance outright. So it is an acceptable use of it. And we're just looking for, a small portion of the cost, that's all.
Okay.
Great, that's all I got.
thanks, Seth.
Thank you.
All right.
Carol, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I just didn't know. if you-
No, I heard it, but I don't know anything about.
It's true,
drugs,
yeah,
but-
so
yeah,
I
I
didn't
know.
know if it was something to talk, you know what I'm saying?
I
We'll let him do it.
think,
but-
I think
Yeah,
it
okay.
just needs to come to
Mhm.
us.
Yep.
So we have 3 policies to look at. Has the board looked at these policies? Tamika, I'm gonna suggest that we need to assign a smaller group, 2 more people. I know you and I look at them, but I think we need either separately from me and to assign that to get it in, and then bring it back to the board to look, because I don't think we're not moving forward on all this work that you're doing, because it's not being looked at before the meeting, and I don't think that we have time to, as we've discussed, to go through it line by line.
I think,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think Skip and I are on like the policy review, is it Skip and I from
that's
the
what I was
goals
thinking.
and objectives, that it was Skip and I, because I think you sent a couple, maybe one of them or both of them to us before, like not just tonight.
So I sent all 3 out last week to the whole board.
Right.
To have ahead of time, and then I sent them again with the package last Thursday, but not specifically to just June Skip.
So, if Why don't we approach it that way? I didn't say anything beforehand because I didn't know if we were ready to do something, but I think that might be the best way to do it, is to have Skip and Leah work with you on them and then get them in a shape that they're ready to come to the board, and then we can maybe do a final sign off on them or something. Do you-
Okay, so just so I'm clear, like,
Yeah.
is that like through email, like you're just gonna look at them and provide feedback? Cause, I'm trying to build them based on comments from the members at the last meeting and then bringing them back, but I guess my concern is that if we go back and forth too many times, it's just the longer we're not implementing these policies. And so I'm trying to use the feedback, but I would just like to have some sort of procedure in place, because sometimes email is not the best way to do these things, and sometimes I feel like the best feedback I get is when I'm in front of you guys. So I don't know if this needs to be like a separate meeting just for policies, or I would just like to have some sort of plan in place than to just kind of leave it open-ended, if that makes sense.
If I may, I do kind of understand it and agree, because I think a lot of times, you know, I kind of take it as for some of the policies, they've been brought before the board, kind of drafted as similar policies from surrounding communities or whatever, from a group that has had input or whatever, or knows that more cohesively or thoroughly than I do, or, you know. And so I do think that it's not necessarily policies that are generated like grassroots from, you know, the ground up. But I do think that tonight especially, it's a long meeting already and we have a lot more ahead of us, I think. But I guess, yeah, I agree that kind of like I feel like no matter what, whoever is on that policy group, no matter what, like if Skip and I bring stuff forward, it's still going to need to be a conversation with the board as a whole. So I don't know what the value versus, especially if like they're coming through from a different, you know, department head or town or whatever, and have been vetted through the appropriate boards and commissions. And you and Carol have already looked at them.
Well, so for example, with the chapter land policy, you know, that's largely what Amy, the assessor, wrote. And between Carol and myself, we pretty much just reformatted it. I did add in some additional information from MGL that had to do with the process on our end as it relates to the board. So that one, and she also vetted that for the appropriate boards and commissions. So she did that one. The town events policy and checklist, that is something that I'm starting from scratch. However, I have worked in collaboration with other departments to get that information. So since the last meeting, you guys had expressed some questions that you had, and I got some clarification for that from Health Agent, Fire Department, to add things on that. And then the other policy was the dedication policy, which was previously approved by the board that Ron had presented, but I think in hindsight it was not very well written, and an application did not exist, which left no paper trail for such requests. So I did create an application from scratch just based on, you know, most applications, and then just kind of used definitions and information from other communities to try to form it. So I think that you know, it might just be helpful moving forward to know how the board wants to handle these types of policies, just so that we're not continually volleying them back and forth, just because at some point we want to make sure that they're adopted so that we have something to work off of, you know, because I think a lot of times it feels like we don't have anything to work off of.
And it's not like a perpetual.
Yeah, it kind of gets us on this hamster wheel where we're never kind of jumping off.
So Leah, do you and Skip want to work on this level, or are you thinking that policy meant more of the, as you termed, grassroots? Because I'm happy to work with Tamika on this, and then, like, I made a couple of notes that I'll ask you about on the events piece, but I don't want to own this, because I don't think any one person should own it. I'm happy to do a lot of the legwork. I'm happy to bring it to the board. Trying to think of how much time we're spending then going through it again, you know, as a group, if
So,
it hasn't been looked at.
if you and Tamika wanted to work something up, Tamika could kick it to Leah and I, and we'd have kind of three people agreeing to something or looking it over and then bring it back to the board.
So I think, yeah, I was gonna say something similar. I think the way the school committee looks at new policies is they do a first read, and it's kind of like, it hashes out in like the subcommittees and everything. They do a first read, and that's where members can provide feedback and everything, and then there's a motion to kind of approve it as a first read, but that doesn't mean it takes effect, and then they go back and spend some more time with it. Generally, it's the 2 weeks until the next meeting or whatever, assuming it's not anything significant. And then there's a second read, and if there's no major questions or anything, so that way the public has had opportunity to hear it and see it, as well as us, you know, the boards, just because, I'm not saying that the public weighs in on all of it, but if there's something that the public has more input or more knowledge about than we do, it affects them more or something, it provides an opportunity for there to be comments through the office as far as like, hey, have you thought about this is actually really burdensome, or...
So my only comment to that is in hearing what you're saying, Leah, I feel like that's kind of what we've been doing, you know, because these policies have all been seen by the board a few times now. I do include these policies in the select board packet online. I've not heard any feedback from anybody yet. So I guess for me, I'm just not sure where to go from here, just because I feel like we've hashed over these a lot of times, and so my hope was to have feedback from the board as to how we move forward. I don't know, Linda, I know you said you looked at them, I don't know what your thought, I don't know, I'm not sure where to go.
I mean, I didn't have any problems with it, because we've had a lot of discussions about these policies as far as I'm concerned. I don't know, you've worked more closely on them, Carol, so you may find
Right,
things
so
specifically.
I wanna make sure that I'm not.
Right, but in what I've looked over and read, I didn't find any problems with it. I mean, other than we've already had discussions previously to that, but, I mean, I didn't have problems with any of them.
And like, I think my big question was for the land policy, question was if AgCom had been able to provide, if
She did, and she did not hear a response from them.
oh, so that was,
Yeah. She had put out to Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and AgCom. Sometimes there is confusion. MGL does not require that it go to AgCom, but we always provide it to them as a courtesy,
Right.
and she did reach out and didn't get a reply.
So then we hear, and this is the second time that I've heard from Mr. Williams that exactly this is that it's not filtering down to the board. And I think that we need to make sure that, like other things, the whole board is hearing,
It
not
wasn't to
just.
the chair of the board.
Right,
So
and so I
can't
don't know
speak
how
that,
to,
but-
I don't know how to trickle that down to you, Dick. But
Who's the chair?
if, you know,
I mean, to be fair, largely the policy is MGL. There really isn't a lot of room for interpretation.
I
The policy
understand,
per
but
se.
there's still internal systems that we, you know, there's the policy, and we can't ever fall below the policy, but we can have more stringency, I think, within town. More checks and balances, just never fall down below, like I said. But Mr. Williams has such a rich knowledge of all of this. I would, you know, we could ask you specifically to look at it. If it's not coming to you as AgCom, I'd be happy to have you look at it, specifically, if you'd like to do that.
Either I or Bob Soderberg, but I think would be even better.
But just as a comment through the chair, I mean, if the chairs of these committees are not sharing information with their boards, and those boards need to be reconsidering their chairs. Because we can't be babysitting everybody and give it to everybody. We should be able to rely on a chair to share that information with their board or the committee. I mean, that's ridiculous if people aren't seeing it.
Our chair was out surgery and so.
Yeah, but can a chair share it with the committee? And then what happens if a committee member shares it back? Now you're in your
Well,
open meeting laws.
everybody's responsible for knowing open meeting responsibilities. So if you're a member of a board or a committee, then you should know the proper channels and shouldn't be discussing it until you're at a meeting. But you still can have the information, it can be provided to the
But
board.
we haven't had a meeting because of Chair Signature thing, so.
Right, yeah, so that's the challenge, is that, you know, yeah, that's hard, because if you have boards and commissions that aren't meeting regularly, you know, and maybe that's something to consider, because with this upcoming chapter process, you know, of course, it will be provided to the AdCom, but depending on whether or not they're able to meet, you know, I don't know how the board wants to handle that, as far as how long you wait for a reply, you know, because of that window, you know, the 120-day window.
Right, we
So
can't-
trying to be respectful, but at the same time,
Right, we
you know,
can't,
it's not a requirement per se.
right, we can't put the process in jeopardy.
Right.
So through the chair, so Tamika, is this the first time it's been shared as a packet for our board? Because we've discussed this. So
No.
it's been public
Yes.
for different versions, so anybody's had the
Online.
ability to review it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's out there.
So, I have a couple of questions about the event, the checklist for town events. First, give me a number of pages, because now I don't know what page it's on. So page 2, under tents, second to last, bullet point, Dig Safe must be contacted for the issuance of a permit. An inspection must be scheduled with them following the installation of the tent. Call 811. I think that Dig Safe needs to be called first before installation. So,
They also have to do an inspection
and that's up to them.
afterwards.
So I think what this says to me, if I'm reading this, is I might do it and then call them afterward. I think it could be a little more clear. Stop, call Dig Safe 811, and this is what you should expect. And then, if there's a need for traffic control, that would prompt a police detail, either we need to provide more information about what would prompt the need for traffic control, or should somebody just call the police and say, this is what I'm doing, and let them make the decision whether there's traffic control? Because my question, is, how do I determine if it's needed or not? And if it's gonna be, if I know that I have to provide a detail, I might say, don't ask, don't tell, and don't pay the fee. So, and then we could be in trouble. So I think that we need to make sure that they call, run it by the police, let them make the call. Those are my 2 comments on it. Other than that, I think it's ready to go. Do we think that we're ready to, do we want to do a first read? You want to consider this a first read, or
I mean-
think it's done?
I think we've already kind of hashed through them, especially, the only one that might be, I don't know, is the,
Naming?
yeah, the dedication naming, but that's kind of a rewrite of the existing, or like a clarification of an existing policy.
It
so-
is, and my question on that was, I know that the Historical Commission was a little hesitant. Have they looked at it again? Are they ready to say, yeah, we're gonna bring this to town meeting?
There's a policy in place, and I believe that their hesitancy came from our current policy does not state anything about the Historical Commission. And there was also a misstatement in the current policy that required a 2/3 majority vote. It seems that that was kind of arbitrarily chosen, and town council has clarified it's a majority vote because it's not a zoning matter.
I think we're ready, then let's move the three of them forward if we're ready. And we can cross those off. So I can have a motion to adopt the chapter.
Motion to adopt the 3 policies.
All 3, great.
Second motion.
That is the chapter land policy, the town events policy and checklist, naming dedication policy for town-owned property for anybody listening. And we have a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Clock eye.
Galvin, aye.
Nichols eye.
Wait a minute.
And Benoit aye. Thank you, Tamika.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, licenses.
It's a long road. We are an expert now for the next policy.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Next is the 2023 license renewals. These are the annual license renewals across the town. Tamika we've changed it up a little bit this year. Typically, we've had the auto dealers and the used car people come in with their books and show them to us, and instead, we asked them to come and see Tamika, and Tamika took copies of them. She has copies at her desk right now in these folders. If you have anything that you want to look at, if there's something that you just are saying, if you want to do a spot check, what we decided is that Tamika would do all of the legwork. She has all the backup, and she has the motions. Did you just give them to me, or is it everybody?
No, everybody's got a copy.
Everybody's got the motions.
I was just gonna point out, the only business that I have nothing from is Bedrock, unfortunately. And because they did not renew their liquor license, the ABCC is going to require them to apply from the start, which includes public hearing, abutter notifications, and the process through the ABCC as well. I tried many different avenues to contact them, and was unsuccessful. They did pay their fee very early in the process, but never came back with the paperwork.
So just do the check, yeah, point out, so Tamika has everything checked off, so shows everybody's what was received, so it's.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to renew the 2023 common victual licenses for all completed applicants as presented.
Second?
Any discussion on that one? Vote.
Clock eye.
Galvin, aye.
Nichols eye.
Wait a minute.
And Benoit aye. Thank you.
So you skipped the common vic one, right?
I said common vic.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
oh,
common
then
vic.
I'm sorry, the common vic, doesn't that the one where he has
No,
to add in?
The second one, no, we only did the first one, the first motion.
There's two.
There's two motions.
Two
under the
common
Right,
vic.
oh, I'm sorry.
Because there's a couple that are pending inspections, but I thought perhaps the board would be comfortable approving it contingent upon the inspections being completed, just because they came in very late in the process.
My bad. I
Skip, can you add to the second, if you're gonna do the second motion, you need to add,
Spotted cow.
baked bakery and spotted cow.
Spotted cow?
Yeah, and spotted cow. And then you can make the motion.
Make a motion to renew the 2023 common victual license for baked bakeries pending and Spotted Cow after completion of inspections.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Clock eye.
Galvin, aye.
Nichols eye.
Wait a minute.
And Benoit aye.
You want the booth?
Okay.
I see you want the booth one?
Sure. I love those. I'll do that. Liquor license. I make a motion to renew the 2023 liquor licenses for all completed applications as presented.
Second.
Discussion? The only discussion I'll make is just so that we're clear, is that Bedrock Golf Course Club is on the liquor license and they will not be receiving. And it is highlighted and it definitely says completed, but just so that we're clear. Roll call.
Clock eye.
Galvin, aye.
Nichols eye.
Wait a minute.
And Benoit aye.
Auto dealer licenses. I make a motion to renew the 2023 auto dealer licenses for all completed applications as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Clock eye.
Galvin, aye.
Nichols eye.
Wait a minute.
And Benoit aye.
Entertainment licenses. I make a motion to renew the 2023 entertainment licenses for all completed applications as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Clock eye.
Galvin, aye.
Nichols eye.
Wait a minute.
Benoit aye. Tamika, that was lovely.
That's so much
Thank you so much.
cleaner and
I know you
easier.
did all the work and we just said yes and no, and that was just, thank you. It worked well. And I received a comment from somebody, and they were very pleased with the way that it happened this year in the office. So I already relayed that to Tamika, but just so that everybody here knows that it was appreciated.
And thank you for going back and forth with us as far as like where we stand as far as our requirements versus everything, and
Right.
you know, keeping us on track. So it's nice to see the checklist as well as know that you
Yeah, I
have
hope that was easy to just
much easier.
see it and,
Thank you.
and just know that everything was there. Yeah.
And I appreciate that you had them broken up by category versus just kind of all lumped together, and then we're like
And then
checking all
searching
around.
Exactly.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
On to new business, the TA search firm update. So as everybody knows, we met with Community Paradigm last week. We signed an agreement with them this last week. And they are in the process of meeting with the board individually. The TA, I did ask them to meet with Tamika since she has a novel insight into what's going on in that office. I thought it was imperative that she speak. And as we've learned, there will be a community survey or something done, and we will find out from the company what that will look like and when we should expect it. Is there any other conversation about that? Any more questions from the board? If you haven't made an appointment with John, please do so. ABCC certification form.
Motion that the chair sign the 2023 liquor license
Oh,
renewal
Skip,
seasonal
I'm sorry to
population.
interrupt you. The ABCC requires that a majority of the board
Oh,
sign
all
the
right,
form.
sorry.
So there's two forms in there. One of them is the certification form that states that Bedrock did not renew their liquor license this year. And the other one is the estimated seasonal population form, which gives our estimated population as of July 2023, which helps them determine the number of types of licenses for the town. And
So-
both have to be signed by a majority of the board.
Okay.
Both of them should be in that color.
So you're
Yes,
just
they are.
making a motion that the board sign them.
I need a second. Second.
Any discussion?
Clock eye.
Galvin, aye.
Nichols, aye.
Whitman, I
Benoit, aye.
is there I know there's been a lot of communication to Bedrock as far as that they needed to do this in order to have, but then I assume there should be communication to them notifying that their liquor license is no longer,
Yes, absolutely.
Just-
As of December 31st, yeah, it will no longer be valid.
and maybe even just as a courtesy, this is the procedure to reinstitute.
Absolutely.
You know, for the small businesses in Rutland doesn't have that many. I think it's a common courtesy to,
Yeah.
I know you've tried as much as possible to help them along,
Yeah.
leading up to it, but now that time has passed,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, and unfortunately, yeah, at this point, it's kind of out of the town's hands because the ABCC is very specific that it has to be done between November 1st and November 30th. And because that didn't happen, we are going to require them to start from scratch again. But I'm happy to give them all the information they need to make that happen.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And notification that it's
Awesome.
expired as of the end of
Yes.
this year, just so that it's
Absolutely.
both.
It's my understanding that they're seasonal for obvious reasons, and that there's sometimes, like, I don't know if they leave town, or I've heard sometimes that a sibling does it and I just have been unsuccessful in all setting things up. Yeah, mail, email, phone calls, all that.
Yeah, because I think they were just recognized fairly late in the spring or summer, weren't they, by Ann and Kim for some big,
Yeah,
like,
he was in a few weeks ago, and provided the feed, but, none of the documentation, and so we talked about it and walked through it, and then I was just never able to make contact again after that.
right?
You'll have to make your own little box.
I know, I'm like,
I know, that's the one that we generated, they only give 4 boxes, I'm not sure why, so I apologize that there's only
going
4
wrong.
Poor Leah's
boxes.
getting boxed out. Instead of boxed in.
All right, we have general bylaws amendments, an update by Peter.
Good evening, everyone. Let me just take a brief moment, share my screen. Says briefly yet.
quickly,
My goodness, this has been taking too long. I apologize. As chair of the Ad hoc Bylaw Committee, I'm here to update everyone on what's going on. But I'm also going to give a little bit of history because not everyone was involved throughout this process. And there's a surprising amount of misinformation in the town, so I thought I might sort of reset our expectations of course.
And you're our tech guy?
And it's and I'm the nerd.
That's what we rely on you.
Which means some days of work. So again, we'll have a brief history lesson. We'll talk about the committee itself. We'll give a status, and we'll also have an overview of the process just to refresh your memories. In 1941, the town of Rutland adopted its first organized bylaws. Before that, it was, oh, let's talk about catching dogs and truancy, and there was no grand scheme at all. In 1940 through, and then adopted in 41, those 6 bylaws were it for the town. Since then, bylaws have been added as things have changed in town. A circumstance occurs, something in Mass General Law caught somebody's attention, and we wrote a bylaw for it. There has been no form or structure. If you've ever been through the website, or if you are unlucky enough to have a printed document, not only is there no form or structure, but things don't look the same in the printed document that they do on the website. Certainly.
Oh, maybe that'll help.
Currently, our current bylaws have been implicitly impacted by court cases, not involving the town, just involving the sections of Mass General Law or some other town's bylaws. General laws have changed. Our current practices change. How we do things changes over time. As I said, there's never been an organization or a structure. Effectively no two bylaws look the same. And as I've already said, things look different depending upon how you look at it. So we're looking to fix all of those problems. The Ad hoc Bylaw Committee was formed by the Select Board in 2017, very late 2017, and we started meeting in 2018. Yes, we've been meeting for 4 years on this. And for the record, the town clerk and I have been at this 2 years longer than that. We're looking forward to being done. Our initial charge was purely the codification. And that is to say how everything looks, so that at least everything would look like a cohesive body of bylaws that had the same structure, the same look. And we originally planned to be finished in the 2019 annual town meeting. We, however, discovered far too many issues with the current bylaws, to the point where the Attorney General would not have approved the bylaws as we presented them unless we also changed the content. As a result, sometime in early 2019, the charge was changed. This is my wording of the charge. It's not the official charge. In fact, I couldn't find the official charge, and the town clerk couldn't find the official charge. So I'm going to take this as our charge. Number 1, exactly what we were charged with initially. Consistent format and presentation of the bylaws. Number 2, modernize the content based on what's changed in Mass General laws, what's happened in the courts, and how we actually do things in Rutland. We are to prepare the body of bylaws for a future town meeting and hold public information sessions before those town meetings so the public can have at least information and in some cases their say. That's our charge. There are some people who firmly believe that only that first sentence is the charge. That is not correct. The last sentence I don't believe is formally part of our charge, but it is our practice. So you're going to ask a question?
Yes, because you said that your slide said that the select board approved of the charge. But you didn't say that the select board approved of a change of the charge.
The change of the charge was done by the select board. When it says charge updated, that means
Okay,
the select board has updated the charge.
Right.
While we're at it, we've taught this group, this body has talked about a charter a lot. A chunk of the work we are doing, especially around governmental structure, is intended to feed directly into the work of a charter group when that gets formed. A question that's come up more than once, why not do the charter before the bylaws? Because, well, we think, number one, that the bylaws are more urgently needed for update, and number two, we don't have a body to work on the charter yet. What I'm trying to say by this is there are chunks of the bylaws that have to be adopted together as a unit. If, for example, we adopt the select board bylaw, but we don't adopt the town administrator bylaw, we are likely to have conflicts. Or even worse, if we adopt the town administrator bylaw and don't adopt the new select board bylaw, then the current select board bylaw rules, and there will be conflicts. I'm not going to discuss tonight how we're going to present a town meeting. That is a whole long discussion we're going to have in the future. But also complicating things is the special legislation that town meeting adopted, and that this board has moved to move that process forward to get special legislation to properly codify the 5-member select board and the Board of Public Works and all of the things around that. That complicates our passage of the amended bylaws. What is the current status? Well, chapters 1 through 6, and we'll talk about what those mean, are through every bit of review we need to do. I'll talk about the entire process in a little bit, and there have been public informations about all of them. Based on the most recent legal updates, we might need to have new public information sessions and a new review session with you as part of our process to go over any substantive changes. I'm not certain there were substantive changes, but I can't know. In fact, I know there are some substantive changes that we need to actually talk through. In addition to those 6 chapters, we have 2 other chapters, and 5 of those bylaws have been put through our amendment process and have been reviewed by the appropriate department or board committee. So they're at the point of being ready for your review. We also have 5 other laws that we have today on the books that we have not finished. In fact, we barely started. We're in the middle of stormwater. Earth Rule, it says, is being worked on by the Earthworks Board. And animal control is big and messy. Fingerprint-based background checks isn't that big. And signs is a monster of a bylaw. And based on my discussion with legal review today, is going to have a substantial set of changes to it in order to be constitutional. In addition, we know, I've talked to Joe. Joe's going to come with 2 more stormwater-related bylaws. And Concom is working on a wetlands protection bylaw. We can only assume those will be done at some point in the not terribly distant future, so we might need to consider those as part of the bylaws that are passed as a body when it's done. Our process, I've sort of hinted at this, and maybe I should have talked about it earlier, but the ad hoc bylaw committee meets, figures out what amendments we believe should be made. Once we're done, we pass it off to what I call department review. It's either a department or a board or committee, whoever has authority for that bylaw. It goes from there to this body for its review, because you have to review everything. At the end of the day, you guys have to put it on the warrant, because you have to have faith and understand it. So we come to you and review it. And then we have 2 paths, because depending upon timing, we things could go in either sequence, but it looks like all futures will go through legal review, and then we'll have a public information session, and then we're ready to have them placed for town meeting. Now, I will mention that in this path, when the public information session happens, the bylaw is locked. During the public information session, something would have to be raised that is so catastrophic that that would make us all the way back to the beginning of a bylaw review process. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but by the time it gets through legal, we don't make changes.
So, can I interrupt you?
Of course.
So, I'm gonna just pick on right to farm bylaw. What department reviews that bylaw?
AdCom already has.
It doesn't, okay.
What's your what is the issue, Skip? Who else should review it?
I don't know, I just don't. I don't think the right to farm, that the town has a right to, we have a right to farm bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
It was changed. Now,
Okay, we are proposing an amendment, yep.
now that the farmer has to go to the town to say, can I do this on my property? Can I do that on my property? Can I do this?
That is unrelated to right to farm. What you're talking about is the agricultural accessory use bylaw, which is zoning, not general, and does not interact with right to farm at all.
Well, you better tell somebody that works in that office over there. But no, okay, no, all right.
So that was a zoning bylaw that was passed through its process through the planning board bylaw review subcommittee and through the planning board and brought to the select board for inclusion. Now, what that allows and doesn't allow, I am no expert on that bylaw by any stretch. So how zoning bylaws interact with general bylaws is actually, I learned today, even messier than I thought it was. And so we hope that there is not an interaction between right to farm and the zoning bylaw.
Wait. Okay, thank you.
Okay? Yes?
Why have you chosen to take the legal followed by public information session? Because I'm going to be a public person right now and say, then why bother having a public information session if if it's locked and I have no, why did you choose that route instead of the other route?
What's the name of that meeting? It's a public information session. It is to inform the public about the bylaw amendment. Now, that is not to say that someone can't raise a question or a comment, but having put through this review process, if board or department believes that it's right, and you believe that it's right, and legal believes that it's right, what can come back from the public that would change any of those perspectives? This is to inform. We gladly accept discussion. We have had discussion at one of the public information sessions. We'll talk about the reasoning, we'll talk about the decision-making process. At the end of the day, though, if something comes up that is that catastrophic, we would pull that back. By that I mean, I wouldn't say nothing can possibly come up in the public information session. I would say that when something does, it would have to go all the way back there, but it's going to have to be a major problem with the bylaw.
So I'm throw it out there that before it goes to the select board review, that it goes to a public session. Because we need to speak, but we represent the town members. And if we're not taking any public information. It gets presented to us in a select board meeting. We're supposed to approve it that night. We've not given the public any say.
You're not approving it that night.
Well, we're saying, giving the blessing to send it
To
along.
continue, sure.
But then by the time we give it the blessing to send along, the public is just too bad. Correct me, board, if I'm off.
Because you're
base
saying
here.
we're not improving it, but it doesn't come back to us. So
Right,
that's
so by
the
the
only
time we say
opportunity the
yes-
board makes a decision on it, right? There's only that one point.
Technically, there's another one out beyond where you decide to place or not place.
And I guess I struggle because what happened this last cycle was we, the select board, spent a decent amount of time going through everything. Then it went to legal, and there were substantive changes to a number of them that we weren't even made aware of as a board, that these, and then it was expected that they were going to be placed on the town meeting. And if we, as a board, voted to move them forward to legal as they were, but then there were substantive changes that we as a board were not made aware of until it was expected that we were placing them at our placement meeting, then yes, legal says that this is what has to happen, but could it be that the board then is, especially for some of the bylaws, that the board is like, time out, we don't agree with this at all, and if this is what legal says it has to do, then we need to rework the whole thing. I don't know.
No, I would say this is probably the most expedient, as much as this process can be expedient, but I don't know that it's right. That's my opinion.
Right.
I think the public session needs to be before us.
Except that then you're not informing the public on an even close to finished bylaw.
But if it's ready to come to the select board, why is it not close to finished?
We've gotten quite a bit of feedback from this body that we've integrated into the bylaw before it went to public information session. Because that's sort of the way that we intended it to flow. It's basically from lesser to greater sets of responsibility, and that the select board, well, you said it yourself, is expected to speak for the public.
But if the public has no knowledge of it before it's presented to us in our select board, how are we knowing the reactions? How do we get the feedback? How do we step outside of this five-member select board and say, I mean, we don't see everything. I'm not comfortable with it, but I'm just one person.
I mean, why would it hurt the process to let the public go first?
I cannot say that it would hurt the process, but I can say that it can make the review process much more complicated. Because you have people with limited actual town knowledge reviewing reviewing a new law. I think that is frequently more than most individuals in town can manage, other than their own individual perspective.
I mean, I think that since I've been on the board, I feel like we're trying to get the town involved. I at least get that overall feel. We're trying to educate people, get people involved. I think something like that could help. It's not going to be easy, but I don't see how it hurts the process if we at least try to educate them to what's going on.
We can look at that for future.
but-
We can look at that for future public information sessions.
Mhm.
Try one. What do you got to lose, Peter?
Oh, just time.
I know.
That's
It's a lot of time, absolutely.
but it doesn't make
Right, I mean, I know you're saying it's a public information session, but why don't you just tell them what you were gonna do at the town meeting and not give them any opportunity to respond, because what's the point of just informing them?
To inform them before town meeting, so that they
Right,
have a
but-
basis of knowledge before town meeting.
But
But that doesn't give them any opportunity for discussion. I mean, it doesn't really give them any input, you're just telling them what they're gonna have to vote for.
and they
they
could
can
all
read
show
that
up and
in
say
the-
no because they feel like they have. I think some of what we've heard is they feel that it's not been fully transparent, and then so they're not gonna even the public information sessions because it's not an opportunity to provide input or actually have questions answered. It's more of this is what it is because this is what we said it is, and legal reviewed it and said that this is what it is, and there you go. So then they're less likely to take it to my impression of a public information session is to buy the public support for it and make them feel vested in it also. And for something as big as, you know, in some cases changing our government, I think that there's value to it being a more thorough process. I don't want to say longer. It will be longer because of the back and forth, but I think that there are questions and perspectives and feedback that may or may not be warranted, but
I do have to correct something you just said, Leah. We are not changing town government. These bylaws do not do this. The structure is the same. This is merely documenting. It's describing what is. We are not putting forth any changes. We are describing, I mean, the new bylaw is the town administrator bylaw.
that was my point.
But that's not a change. The town administrator position exists. What we're doing is making sure that everybody understands in bylaw what the responsibilities of that are and how they differ from the select board. And how they differ from finance committee, because there's interaction there. That's what we're doing. This is not a creative writing exercise to see different forms of government and what we could do. This is purely describe what the town does now.
Peter?
So, yes.
Question, just to let you know that I brought forth the right to farm bylaw to the committee, who was supposed to pass it on to council to have it checked. And also you were gonna send it, I thought you were sending it out to town council also for their view,
It has not yet been sent to town
but it
council,
has not yet.
because it hasn't been through their review.
But I'm seeing now that it should go to our council to make sure everything is fine as far as the Ag Commission is concerned. It has not, we have not heard back. As far as we gave it out to one of the members to pass it on, and I don't think it made it. So, we haven't had a meeting since, so it's still not come back yet.
It may not have come back as the body, but you know as well as I do that there was AgCom representation in every one of those discussions for Right to Farm.
I know, correct.
He knows because he was at.
But I wanna make sure, I just want to make sure.
I don't disagree, I think.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with the right to farm. I have a problem with step 2, if you want to call it that. The agritourism.
Yeah. all
That's my
that.
problem.
Yep.
But the right to farm, I have no problem with that, Richard.
No. No, I.
But it was thrown in my face that they talked to me about this other AgCom, whatever you want, agritourism.
Agritourism, yeah.
They said they talked to me. He was not very truthful about it. And I said, hey, you never talked to me. Being on the select board, and nobody came to the select board to saying what they were saying and what they want to do. That was all our lovely. Never mind. Let's move on, Peter.
Yeah, I think let's move on.
I think we better
Okay.
move on before I get really upset.
So we'll talk about our,
Arrangement later.
yeah,
Yeah.
the process, how we'll change this in the future, we'll talk about that. Here are the 8 chapters. There we go. This is an old slide, comparison of the old with the original structure and the new structure, and how they're all going to look like the one on the right when they're done. Including, well, purpose is usually straightforward in the bylaw, but we always document how we have authority to pass this bylaw. And in many cases, who has authority for enforcing and administering. Another old slide, most of you have seen this before. We change a word. The Attorney General's office calls it a substantial change, substantive change, even though the meaning of the words is identical. You change a piece of punctuation. That is a substantive change. Every substantive change needs to be adopted at town meeting. Sure. But I'm going to draw a difference between what is called a substantive change, which is virtually every change to every bylaw, and consequential changes, which are those that change the intent or effect of the bylaw. And I gave a particular example. This is that consequential changes document that you find on our webpage. Where do you find them? Boards and commissions, ad hoc bylaw committee, proposed bylaw amendments, which brings you to, well, this is most of the way down, but I wanted to point out some things that are on this page. There's a lot of text at the top that talks about the process and discusses consequential versus substantive changes. Then we have every single bylaw with the ability to read our proposed change. We actually say, who reviewed the bylaw? And all of those abbreviations are here. And finally, we actually have side by side the old and new bylaws, so that now, unfortunately, I still haven't found a way to have it click a link and get them up side by side. So you have to click one side to get the old and one side to get the new, and you can do side by side comparisons. Oh, good Lord, you've been at this since 2017. When are you going to be done? Well, the glib answer is whenever you tell us we're done. By the committee's charge, it's not something I wrote up there, that when you form the permanent bylaw committee, the ad hoc bylaw committee passes that work off and is discharged. So if you were to start that process, we would be done as soon as the new committee comes in. But that's a very glib answer. The next likely town meeting where we could put the full body up is likely May 6, 2024, because of that special legislation. Without the special legislation, the Attorney General would not allow us to adopt the new Select Board or Board of Public Works bylaws. They would reject them out of hand. So we don't dare bring them to the Attorney General, which means pass them at town meeting, until after that is passed. Now, we expect that to be passed in 2023. It is possible, and I can't tell you what the probability is. I only know that in the realm of the possible, it is possible that the special legislation could be passed early enough that bylaws could be considered for special in November next year. I don't know that that will happen. I only know that it's in the realm. Whether or not that's of your taste, you're willing to support that, different question, and it doesn't matter until the special legislation is passed. So until that's done, the bylaw committee is going to continue its work with the 5 remaining bylaws and any new ones that come in, and we'll continue our process. I did want to point out
that I have spent 6 hours with different iterations of this body, actually 8, but that's another story, doing bylaw review of the first 6 chapters. And I've had public information sessions for the first 6 chapters. Those are all done. Now, we have to go back and look at the full set of legal changes to every bylaw to see what substantive changes have occurred that need notification to you and to a new public information session. And then we'll have a public information session for the new bylaws as we get them through our process. Just to plug the Town of Rutland's Video Cable Advisory Committee's Video On Demand service, tv.townofrutland.org, brings you to a menu. You select either channel 197, channel 192 or 193, 191 or 192, and it brings you to a whole bunch of videos that we have. It's our entire Video On Demand library. I searched for by-law, and this is what came up. I would not be shocked that YouTube, which has the same recordings, has the same ability. I just don't know what it is, and I'm not sure that I care to learn enough about YouTube to know how to use it that way.
Okay, great, thank you for that.
So, next year, fairly early, we would like to begin the next set of reviews. The first one will be substantive changes of bylaws you have already reviewed, and we'll go over those. And from there, we will also do the next 5 bylaws, which is one meeting unto itself. If we can combine those 2 into a single one, that would be awesome, but we'll have to see what the content really is. There, that's where we are. Questions, comments?
Thank you to you and the committee for, I know it's been a tremendous amount of work and not always the most friendly amount of work. So, thank you for...
How diplomatic.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Right. Stay tuned.
That's right. To be continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have been requested to, DCR plan the Long Pond boat ramp. Are you familiar with this, Mr. Williams?
Yes, somewhat.
Just, we're being asked to pretty much take a position, and then I don't know if it's write a separate letter or join. There's a public comment email link or something like that too, so.
I think we should do both. Write the letter and
Wasn't there a specific request for a letter?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it came from Senator Goby and Representative Ferguson. When we met a couple weeks back, they asked, they felt that it would be powerful if the board took a position. They are not in support of what they're proposing, which would be to no longer allow public boat access at Long Pond Boat Ramp. And so I had sent a link to you guys. It's like a 140-page report, so it's pretty lengthy. But that's pretty much the gist of it, is the DCR is looking to close that access to the pond for various recreation.
For larger engines and no tubing and water skiing.
Yes.
But boats still can be used in there, but not
Right.
the large engine ones.
Correct. Thank you for the clarification.
And I
I've
do
spoken
believe
with
the boat
somebody.
ramp is named after the late policeman that died of COVID.
Detective
Sanji.
Sanji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's talk out there that this is just going to be the tip of the iceberg, though. taking the boat ramp access
Yeah,
away.
and they're gonna take
And then the next thing you know.
Perry
it's gonna
Dam
be
back
blocked
and not
off.
let anybody hunt, walk on it and everything else, so.
Yeah, I think they've been working on it when they didn't want to
Oh, yeah.
open the gates and then prison camp stuff and
Prison camp's back on the chopping block.
yeah, and I think it's frustrating because if it seems like DCR is much more involved in areas closer to Boston in a positive recreation way, and out here farther away from the city they just want to close everything and not allow anyone any sort of access and come up with a host of reasons as to why. And I think the town, I think with Ware River Watershed and the town and Senator Goldie and Representative Ferguson, I think we've been trying to establish a friendlier relationship with DCR and show them that we can coexist, that we can still maintain the purity of the water supply and also not just be blocked out of more than half of our town. And it seems like it's cyclical, and DCR is back on wanting to block us out from a majority of our town.
With the exception of the prison camp, they are allowing Intervale Road to be open to the prison camp only, and that's too bad. And I concur, and the meeting that we had down here the same night as your special, I wish it was filmed, because Senator Brewer was the best speaker of them all. And he laid it right into Dan Clark, and I mean, told him point blank, you know, this was meant for recreation. And you can't show where the water quality has dropped. The water quality has stayed even all the way around, so. And that's, at Quabbin Regional was the same thing, and that place was packed. So, I feel there will be changes, but I know that Dan is still pushing like crazy to shut it up. Only open for hunters, and that's it.
So is there, I forgot what we talked about last week, is there a template for a letter that was supposed to write, or am I supposed to be, you're supposed to be
I
linked?
thought you said that you had one, or you had
I-
watched something,
it-
you thought
I-
you had something. They didn't provide
They
anything
provided
to
a
us.
link that you could kind of sign on to, so,
Okay.
um,
She did not provide anything.
Okay.
Based on the conversation, it sounded like she wanted the board to express their support through that link with the comment section
Okay.
that they're accepting to
Okay.
February.
so I would say that the board can do it, but everybody can do it. And I think that, you know, I would just encourage anybody on their Facebook pages, I'll try to find the link, unless you know right where the link is, and send it out.
I put it in the meeting packet for
Okay.
this week. It has the link to all that information.
The whole report is
Yeah, so it gives the link to the information on where to find your report, and then it also gives the link on where to provide your comments.
Okay.
That's in the packet.
If the board is taking this stand, what does the board think about letting Tamika post that under the town administrator page on Facebook?
That'd be a good idea.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I
if
think
the board
it's-
agrees to
Okay.
sign it, then yeah.
I think it's,
Agreed.
I mean, and I think based on just the feedback from iterations of the board as well as iterations of meetings over the course of the years that I've been on the board, it's the same sentiment across the majority of town that, hey, this is our town, like, we're willing to work with you, but come on, like, don't block us out, like.
There's been talk about a pilot program that we're, in lieu of, we're getting something, and I'm not sure what that really looks like, or if DCR can even tell us what that
I mean, Becky
pilot
has,
amount is.
Becky has the funds, but
But it is, you know, what the probably I heard from somebody that was at that meeting, so you've probably heard all of this in, you know, there's also the, you talk about our property values. A lot of our property values, or the draw of Rutland, is the open space and the recreation and the access, and closing that all down could have a trickle effect, or maybe not even a trickle effect, maybe more of a stream effect for our property values and all of that. So, Tamika, go ahead and put that on, and everybody grab it from, it'd be great to grab it from there, actually, and share it from there, if we could do that. because then that draws more people back to the town administrator page as well, so, okay, great.
And if you don't mind sending around the link again to provide feedback, I, in my tired state, am not able to find it easily in my email.
Sure.
So if you don't mind, sorry. I found the report link, so thank you.
Next is Deborah has invited the board as well as the town administrator, anybody that's available. I think Tamika sent it out to all of us. A thank you breakfast at the holiday, is it the 19th?
It's the 19th, yes.
19th at, I forgot the time.
10 a.m. I think. I'm pretty sure it's 10 a.m. But I can confirm if anybody.
So
else is
anybody
available.
that is available can jump on down,
I was just
let
gonna say,
Tamika know.
I was gonna say yes. If you could please let me know, because I was trying to get a head count of who plans to attend. I know Lynn didn't.
And it's not on here, but a reminder to anybody that on the board, on the 22nd is the town employees Christmas party over to Dolce Vita. Again, Tamika has, even if you can just drop by for a little bit, Tamika has an RSVP link.
You gotta
It's
vote.
during the day, but it's.
Yeah, you gotta click the link.
And then finally, our next board meeting will be December 27th at 6 PM. It will be a Zoom only. Originally, we were going to just pass the payroll and other warrant, but we will, if Gary and Seth have some information for us, we'll have that on the meeting as well. But we are trying to leave it to emergency purposes only, just so that people can enjoy a little bit more of the holiday time.
And that's a Tuesday, right? Because the
Tuesday,
26th is the official
26th,
holiday.
yes.
So
Yeah.
It's, and we will resume in person on January 9th, 2023.
No,
No?
no,
We won't?
no, you won't, not, you won't find me there.
On January 9th?
Who's partying or something?
All right, oh yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting you're not going to be, you're going away.
Yes.
All right.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Clock
Any-
eye.
Galvin,
Nichols eye.
wait a minute.
But I-